I had sensed something unusual about Sarah for a time now. She would laugh a bit too loud at jokes that weren't humorous, and her stories always seemed a touch too flawless. It made my gut twist with confusion. I could feel the weight of her falsehoods hanging in the air, and I couldn't pretend it didn't upset me anymore. As we celebrated her birthday, surrounded by people who were all smiling and having fun, I felt like I was carrying a huge burden. I knew I had to say something. As I stepped into the great hall for Sarah's birthday party, I was impressed by how lovely everything looked. Bright colors swirled everywhere, streamers dangled from the ceiling, and balloons drifted around. The music played gently, but the laughter of guests filled the air, creating a bustling buzz. Tables packed with wonderful goodies attracted my eye. Everyone was conversing, enjoying games, and sharing stories. It was a party to remember, yet I felt a knot in my gut. In one location, people were giving impassioned comments about Sarah. Each statement made her smile more, and for a second, I felt guilty. How could I wreck this perfect day? But then I remembered the lies buried behind her pleasant expression. I had to tell everyone the truth, but how could I destroy such a lovely celebration? "Hey, you okay?" a friend inquired, sensing my stillness. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Don't let it get to you. It's Sarah's day." They pushed, but I could only nod. Every grin seemed like a lie, and every shout reminded me of what I knew. I had to act swiftly. I couldn't let this lovely environment fool me any longer. Suddenly, I noticed Sarah across the room, her laughter ringing out. I clenched my fists, preparing to meet her. I had to reveal the truth, no matter the cost. But just as I took a stride forward, I hesitated. What if I broke her happiness? Laughter flooded the room, but it felt false to me. I was drowning in lies. Every smile I faked felt like a big stone in my chest. Sarah, with her cheery talk, just reminded me of the lies she'd spun. It hurt. Trust was gone, and ties were knotted like a chaotic ball of yarn. I wanted to yell at her. I wanted her to feel the storm inside me. Was I looking for justice, or was it revenge? Watching her on stage, it felt like she was a million miles away. I worried that if I challenged her, everything might grow worse. Regret snuck in, whispering questions. What if our complete friend group fell apart? I could see it in my mind, everyone moving away. Links snapping like thin threads. This wasn't just about me, it was about all of us. Standing there, I felt the weight of betrayal threatening to crush me. I knew that calling her out might offer me a minute of solace, but it wouldn't take away the anguish. The laughing faded into a chilling echo, warning me that no celebration could mask the sorrow. I had to face the truth, even if it meant standing alone. "Sarah," I shouted, cutting through the cacophony. Her head snapped toward me, surprise written across her features. "What's wrong?" she inquired, her voice too pleasant. "Everything," I shot back. "You lied to me, and now I can't trust you." Her smile faltered, and I could see her mask slipping. "It's not what you think," she said, but I could hear the worry in her voice. "Then tell me the truth," I asked, feeling my heart rush. The gathering around us grew hushed, eyes transfixed to our encounter. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, hopelessness creeping in. "I thought it would be easier." "Easier for who? You or me?" I challenged, my hands clenched. The music beat hard, and the colored lights flashed all around me. I felt like I was on a tightrope, wavering between trying to be pleased for my friend and the stab of betrayal in my heart. I watched Sarah whirl about with Jake, smiling and joyful, while I felt the weight of deception crushing me. The celebration was vibrant, but underneath, confidence was coming apart like glass. "How could you do this to me?" I mumbled to myself, tightening my hands. Sarah, my best friend, had decided to sneak around instead of being honest. It ached so terribly. I wanted to shout, to tell her how badly she was hurting me. But fear held me back. I was stuck in a disaster I never signed up for, lost in a swarm of cheerful faces while I felt so alone. Every time Sarah smiled, it felt like a sharp razor twisting in my gut. "I can't believe you're okay with this," I thought, feeling heated wrath surge in me. I wanted to challenge her right then, to expose the truth about her lies, but I bit my tongue. Maybe there was a better way to address this. I forced myself to dance, moving with the music, acting everything was okay. Happy birthday, Sarah, I muttered through gritted teeth, my voice unsteady. But inside, my heart was screaming for justice. How could she celebrate while hiding the truth? I felt like I was losing a part of myself in this act. Suddenly, I observed a group of pals laughing by the punch bowl. I ran over, my heart racing. Did you know about Sarah and Jake? I shouted out, and the murmurs started. Faces turned, and I felt the stress build. No way. Are you serious? One friend gasped. The party vibe faded as more people came in, and I felt a sense of power flood through me. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I have to make this deceit known. Yeah, it's true. She's been lying to all of us. Gasps resonated around the room. Sarah's laughter faded as she caught my glance, surprise and fury flashing across her features. What are you talking about? She cried, hurrying over. Don't act dumb, Sarah. You've been sneaking around with Jake. I yelled, my voice breaking through the noise. The fight with Sarah knocked the wind out of me. I couldn't believe she'd hurt me like this, not just with Jake but in a way that felt like a hit to the gut. I replayed the scene in my head, looking for hints. Why was she behaving so fake? It felt like she was hiding something, and I needed to know what it was. Sitting alone, the sorrow of her deception seemed heavy, like a giant rock sitting on my chest. I was angry and perplexed. Did she ever care about our friendship, or was I merely a part in her game? I discovered Sarah's behaviors were more deeper than I first assumed, and the more I considered, the more I understood that I barely knew her. It felt like a dagger piercing through the trust we created over the years. I wanted to contact her again, to dig for answers. Why did she risk everything we had? I needed to know, but deep down, I scared what I would find out. I felt a great drive to find the truth. It was out there, buried behind her lies. I had to locate it, not just for myself, but to comprehend who Sarah truly was and why she hurt me so badly. Sarah, we need to talk. I eventually replied, my voice calm despite the fury inside me. She looked up, her expression a mix of defiance and shame. What's there to say? You already know. Do I? Because I don't think you're being honest with me. I came closer, my heart pumping. What are you hiding? She paused, and for a second, I noticed a spark of something in her eyes. Fear. Regret? You wouldn't understand. Try me. I shot back, my rage spilling up. You've turned our friendship into a game. Why? I had my reasons, she muttered, but her voice shook. Reasons? I scoffed. You broke my heart. Was it worth it? Her silence spoke volumes. As I stared into Sarah's eyes, I felt the burden of falsehoods hanging between us like a heavy cloud. I had to address her about the reality that ate away at me. She'd used my feelings to cover what she was actually doing, and I felt rage and desperation building up inside. I took a long breath to relax myself. Sarah, we need to talk, I replied, my voice calm but tense. I sensed a glimmer of terror in her eyes. Did she know what was coming? The treachery felt like a big rock in my chest. I'd trusted her while she played me for a fool. I saw the texts, Sarah. You can't deny it anymore. My heart raced as her face transformed. She was stuck in her own lies. I felt a rush of strength, but it worried me too. Was I developing into someone like her? The stillness between us was profound. I wanted her to see how badly she'd hurt me. This isn't just about you and Jake. It's about our friendship. I watched her facade start to crumble, and for a fleeting second, I thought she might finally admit. But I knew this was just the start of a much bigger war. You lied to me, I shouted, my voice rising. How could you do this? Sarah flinched, and I pressed on. You used me. You messed with my heart. I could see tears gathering in her eyes, but I didn't care. You didn't think I'd find out. I dared her, my hands tensed. The truth was out, and it was time for her to face it. Fueled by rage and determination, I stepped closer to Sarah, my heart racing. It's time for the truth, I murmured, my voice firm even though I felt like a storm was gathering inside me. I saw her eyes widen as I addressed her, and I could feel the betrayal swelling like a wave between us. Sarah, I know what you've done. I pressed, watching her face drain of color. The falsehood hovered in the air, changing everything we previously trusted. It felt like our friendship was breaking apart. I had to voice what had been plaguing me. Her manipulation had turned our friendship into a cruel game. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I challenged, feeling relieved as the guilt melted away. I didn't want to hurt her, but I had to face this head on. I wanted honesty, not lies. The air crackled with tension, and her calm was deafening. As I laid out the damage, I knew how hard it would be to re-establish our trust. I wanted to scream and cry, but I held it together. This was bigger than just me. I had to face the reality, even if it hurt. I had to stand strong, even if it meant losing everything we'd achieved together. Even though I believed I was ready for the truth, nothing could prepare me for what Sarah said next. We stood in my living room, and the air seemed heavy. I'd just asked her about Jake, expecting her to deny it or cry, but instead, she looked me directly in the eyes and dropped a bombshell. "I wasn't just with Jake," she muttered, shivering. "I've been seeing someone else too." My heart fell. This was worse than I could have ever imagined. How could she betray me like way, professing to be my best friend? It felt like a storm crashing over me. Anger bubbled inside, mingling with shock. I wanted to shout, to cry, to do anything than stand there. Each phrase from her mouth seemed like a knife cutting through the trust we had. "Why would you do this?" I shouted, my voice trembling. I needed answers. But as she stammered for words and glanced away, it hit me she wasn't going to explain. The instant Sarah announced she was seeing someone else, everything crumbled, my heart sank. She'd been lying to me. I never believed she could harm me like way. We were meant to be closest friends, but suddenly it felt like a terrible scam. Sarah's actual nature came out. She was playing a game, and I was just a pawn. Suddenly, our friendship altered. I couldn't see her as my buddy anymore. She was a stranger with a phony grin. I saw her laugh, but it didn't sound real. It seemed like I was locked in a nightmare. I wanted to shout, to tell everyone about her falsehoods, but I had to keep my cool. When I challenged her, I noticed the remorse on her face. She was no longer the fun, carefree buddy I loved. Now, she looked little and afraid, imprisoned in her own filth. Anger erupted inside me. How could she betray me so completely? "I thought we were friends, Sarah. How could you do this?" I yelled, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you," she begged, tears in her eyes. Betrayal hit me like a blow in the gut. I felt a fire blazing inside, a thirst for payback that I couldn't shake off. Anger boiled just under the surface, ready to blow. Sarah had lied to me, and that hurt more than I could explain. I wasn't just a sad buddy anymore. I was eager to make her pay. As I watched her laughing at her birthday party, surrounded by friends, my heart plummeted. Each laugh felt like a knife twisting deeper. I had to do something. I could almost taste the joy of discovering her lies. "Everyone deserves to know the truth," I said to myself, heart thumping. The notion of her shame made my rage roar louder, drowning out any guilt. But then uncertainty crept in. Is revenge really the answer? I thought, would it bring me peace, or just make things worse? I wrestled with that while I plotted my next move. I knew payback may transform me, but the fury pushed me on. All I could think about was making her pay for the hurt she inflicted. "Hey Sarah," I shouted, striding into the party. She turned, surprise flashing in her eyes. "We need to talk." The room fell silent, all eyes on us. I could feel the stress crackle like electricity. "Why did you lie to me?" I demanded, my voice firm, but within, my heart raced. Her smile vanished. "What are you talking about?" she asked, playing innocence. I stepped closer, rage pouring over. "You know precisely what I mean. It's time everyone learns who you really are." The crowd leaned in, waiting for the event to unfold. "Stop it," she yelled, but I could see fear creeping into her eyes. This was my time. I wouldn't back down. I had to show her the ramifications of her betrayal. The room buzzed with whispers, and I felt a rush. This was my moment to turn the tables. Would Sarah finally feel the weight of her lies? The excitement of payback spurred me forward, ready for whatever came next. Once I let the truth slip about Sarah, it was as if a huge load had been dropped off my shoulders. But with that comfort came a devious thought, spreading rumors. I'd just told everyone about Sarah's lie, and the power I felt was like a sugar high. Our friendships altered overnight, and I couldn't resist the impulse to twist things to my benefit. I started talking about Sarah, letting her secrets leak like juice from a shattered bottle. "Did you hear about Sarah and Jake?" I asked, my voice dripping with uncertainty. Inside, a small voice nagged at me. Was I turning into her? The trust among our friends was dissolving, and I could practically feel the weight of my decisions. I was using their feelings against them, fueling my drive for payback. The effect was instant. Friends stared at Sarah as if she were a stranger. I watched her bright smile fade, replaced by confusion and grief. I believed I was only speaking the truth, but I was also causing agony for everyone. The more I pushed, the more I realized how weak our friendships actually were. As I leaned back and watched the commotion unfold, I started to feel apprehensive. I'd launched a storm, and the joy of my revenge felt empty. What did I truly gain from all this? My mind raced, and I realized I had to reassess what I'd done. Watching things break apart felt like being in the middle of a storm. I'd hurt Sarah, and now our friendship was collapsing. I thought sharing everyone her secret would make me feel better, but it actually made things worse. I opened a box of hurt that would be with us forever. As I witnessed our friends turn their backs on Sarah, a crushing shame fell in my chest. I never meant it to go this far. Yet here we were, facing a catastrophe I caused. I wanted payback, but suddenly it felt like a punishment for both of us. My choices seemed like a rock pushing down, stealing away any joy I imagined I'd get. Every day was a fight. I have to face what I'd done and think about how to heal from this mess. I tried to go on, but the specter of treachery wouldn't leave me alone. Could I ever forgive Sarah? Could I accept myself? I learned that finding forgiveness isn't easy. In the end, dishonesty took more than just our friendship, it stole my tranquility. I felt stuck in wrath and grief. I'd turned into someone I didn't recognize, and that stung more than any lie. How could my pals respond so differently to the chaos I'd just unleashed? The moment I disclosed the truth about Sarah's betrayal, gasps sounded across the gathering. Some pals appeared horrified, while others seemed entirely unmoved. Confusion and panic flooded over me. I thought friends were meant to stick together, but now I saw holes in our bond. A few pals raced to Sarah's side, defending her. "Why are you turning on her?" One yelled, horror etched on their face. Their loyalty stung like a slap. I recognized this betrayal went deeper than just Sarah's lies. It was about trust in our whole group. I sensed mental wounds accumulating, not just for myself, but for everyone. But then, some friends nodded at me. "You did the right thing," one said. They recognized my desire for honesty. I had to disclose the truth, no matter the fallout. Yet the mixed remarks felt like a chasm widening between us. As the discussion dragged on, I thought about how we could address this. Would we ever be complete again? The truth has devastating ramifications. I feared we'd never return to how things were. The concept of forgiving was overpowering. I wanted to mend our links, but the damage felt too large. I stood there, feeling lost, wondering if I'd given everything for just a minute of honesty. The room was silent, and it felt heavy, like a dense fog weighing down on us. I stood there, knowing I'd just dropped a bombshell in the middle of our celebration. The laughter became quiet, replaced by looks and whispers. I could feel the stress mounting, like black clouds gathering for a storm. My heart was racing rapidly. I'd just changed everything. Sarah was transfixed, her smile fading as my words soaked in. I saw disbelief flicker in her eyes, immediately shifting to wrath. Friends swapped anxious glances, their cheeks blanched with shock. They felt the untruth hanging in the air, and it made my stomach twist. I was both afraid and brave, standing at the midst of this storm. Jake's face wrinkled in perplexity. He looked back and forth between Sarah and me, realizing the betrayal setting in. The air felt dense with questions nobody dared to ask. The room that had previously been full of excitement was suddenly hushed, and I felt like I was about to burst. I wanted to go, to hide from the disaster I'd made. But I stayed put, heart hammering. I knew I'd crossed a line. Every second seemed like eternity. I could feel everyone holding their breath, waiting for Sarah's response. I readied myself for the turmoil that was about to arise. This meeting would never be the same again. The room felt thick with stress, like a huge blanket weighing down on us. My pulse raced as I prepared to divulge Sarah's lies. I knew this would affect everything. Betrayal can twist relationships into something terrible, and I could feel that fact hanging on me. I remembered the good times we had trust, laughter, and secrets exchanged. But now, I was ready to face the lies. I took a deep breath, knowing the truth would have enormous implications. Sarah's been lying to us. She's cheating on Jake, I yelled. My voice reverberated off the walls, and horrified faces looked toward me. Whispers filled the air, and I felt a feeling of remorse rush over me. Was I the bad guy in this story? As people mumbled, I knew that exposing her meant looking at my own decisions. Rebuilding trust would be hard, maybe even impossible. I felt caught between wanting retribution and doing the right thing. I wanted to scream or run away, but I kept my ground. I had to face the lies, even if it meant losing everything. This was my moment, and I couldn't back down. Suddenly, Sarah fired a scowl at me, her eyes flaming. "You don't know what you're talking about," she spat, her voice cutting like a razor. Anger flashed inside me. "But I do, I saw the texts." I shot back, feeling the intensity of the struggle. The room pulsed with enthusiasm. Friends glanced at each other, unsure of what to believe. I could see the fissures spreading in our group, and I knew this was just the beginning of a terrible spiral. In that moment, I recognized betrayal was more than just Sarah's falsehoods. It was about trust damaged and friendships on the verge. The air crackled with stress, and I was ready for whatever happened next. I thought notifying everyone about Sarah's deception would make me feel better. But it actually made things worse. It felt like I'd opened a box full of mayhem that I couldn't manage. Our friendship disintegrated, and I was left standing in the debris, recognizing that regaining trust would be a major effort. Every day felt like a weight on my shoulders. I couldn't shrug off the guilt. Was I the victim, or had I made things worse? I started writing down my sentiments and talking to people, trying to find a method to deal. It was like I was drowning in misery, and I wanted oxygen. I had to set new limitations. I pulled away from everyone who still stood by Sarah. I didn't want to get drawn back into the turmoil. Healing was slow, and I had to face my feelings squarely. I felt that communicating freely was crucial, not simply to share my sorrow, but to genuinely comprehend what others were going through. Through all the tumult, I understood I had to evolve. I needed to think about what I genuinely wanted in friendships and how to avoid getting wounded again. The road ahead was challenging and full with questions, but I knew I had to keep moving. Each step taught me about strength, telling me that I could come out stronger after this storm. "Why would you do this to me, Sarah?" I yelled, my voice booming in the empty room. "I thought you'd always have my back." She shot back, her eyes brimming with rage. "I thought I could trust you," I shouted, rage bubbling inside. The tension was intense, and I could feel the lie like a dagger in my gut. As we faced one another, I knew I had to make a choice, to stay wrapped in this toxic mess or to break free and find my own way. "I wanted to be honest," she continued, her voice wavering. "But I was scared of losing you." I stared at her, my heart pumping. Desperation filled her gaze, yet rage rose up inside me. How could she say she wanted honesty after all the lies? This wasn't just a chat. It seemed like a war between devotion and betrayal. Our relationship was hanging by a thread, and the strain was thick in the air. "Scared of losing me?" I shot back, my voice harsh. "You already lost me the moment you lied." She took a step back, her face blanched. I could feel the guilt coming in, but it didn't matter. The trust was broken. "You don't understand," she shouted, her hands quivering. "I thought it was for the best." "For who?" I demanded, hands clenched. "This was about you, not me." Her silence rang louder than words. I felt a flood of melancholy crash over me, coupled with the rage. This was a poisoned game we were locked in, and I was done playing. "You need to choose," I said, my voice firm. "Me or your lies." She stared at me, tears in her eyes. I choose you." But I couldn't believe her. Not anymore. The falsehood stung too deep. I turned away, feeling the weight of sadness rest in my chest. This was the end of us, and I couldn't help but wonder whether it was the start of something terrible. Heartbreak affected Jake hard after that night. He felt like a ship lost at sea, disoriented and in pain. How could Sarah, someone he trusted so much, hurt him like this? The instant he exposed her falsehoods, it felt like his universe crashed around him. "I can't believe you'd do this," he cried, his voice quivering. The treachery felt like a sharp knife piercing into his heart. Why should I trust anyone again? He wondered, anger surging inside him. The love he once felt for Sarah was gone, replaced with a thick gloom that wouldn't lift. He knew he had to let go. but her betrayal hung over him like a thundercloud. Things grew worse as their friend group fell apart. Where did everyone go? Jake wondered as he sat alone at lunch. He'd always been surrounded by friends, but now he felt like a stranger. Each day was a fight. He tried to stay busy playing sports, hanging out with a handful of friends, and even writing down his ideas. But nothing could fill the emptiness inside him. Weeks passed, and Jake battled. He missed the excitement he used to feel. Will I ever love again? He thought, his heart bleeding. The journey ahead was arduous, fraught with doubt and despair. But deep down, he knew he had to keep going. Trust is hard to rebuild, he told himself. Each failure taught him about strength and the necessity for real friends. He knew it would take time, but Jake was determined to emerge from the ashes of betrayal and find hope again. Guilt hit me like a ton of bricks, hard and crushing. I thought uncovering Sarah's betrayal would feel nice, but instead, it left me bereft. My heart raced as I remembered that night. Our companions gasped, their horrified faces haunting me, reminding me of the chaos I released. I wanted retribution, but all I felt was a nasty twist in my stomach. Sarah's countenance turned from amazement to grief, and I could see the pain in her eyes. I hadn't simply lost her trust, I was destroying my own heart too. Was this really what I wanted? The strength I felt when I disclosed her falsehoods evaporated, leaving only remorse. Days went by, and the weight of guilt wouldn't move. It pushed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I lost Sarah, and the friendship we had was gone. Our buddies looked at me suspiciously, unsure if they should select sides. I felt alone, trapped by my own choices. I believed telling the truth would set me free, but it simply tied me tighter in chains of sadness. I discovered I had become what I detested. In my pursuit for justice, I missed the greater picture. Now, I was left with the harsh truth. Sometimes, honesty doesn't provide relief. It creates sadness. Why did you do it? Sarah's voice was shaky, filled with anguish. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I thought you were my friend. She sobbed, tears flowing down her face. I wanted to show everyone what you did. I sputtered, but it seemed empty. Did it make you feel better? She shot back, wrath blending with her pain. I stood there, paralyzed, knowing I'd crossed a line. In that instant, I understood I had lost not just her but a part of me too. That night changed everything. I found myself sitting alone in my room, repeating the turmoil in my mind. I'd harmed Sarah, but it didn't stop there. I'd shattered our whole friend group. I needed to face what I'd done. I took my book and started writing. Each syllable felt heavy as remorse rushed over me like a tsunami. I believed revealing Sarah would make things right, but I was mistaken. I'd allowed my rage control me, and now I was lost. I didn't want to be the person who hurt others out of rage. Why did I do that? I whispered to myself, fury bubbling up. I took a deep breath, telling myself that I couldn't change the past. I have to learn from it. I'll do better, I said, trying to convince myself. I have to be more honest and less ready to hit back. Confronting betrayal didn't mean getting even. It meant finding a way to heal without losing myself in rage. It was hard to look back, but I knew I needed to. I'm sorry, Sarah, I wrote, hoping that those words would fix the pain. Reflection hurt, but it was the only way to evolve. I had to own my mistakes and confront the results head-on. It was time for a change. As I watched our friend group split apart, it felt like a giant storm was rolling in. The laughter we used to share transformed into quiet whispers, and the intimate relationships we built crumbled apart like a flimsy sandcastle. I realized that what happened touched everyone, not just Sarah and me. It felt like trust was a puzzle, and I'd made it difficult to put back together. I was drowning in the mess I produced. I thought about why I wanted payback and how everything got totally out of hand. I crossed lines I never thought I would, driven by hurt and rage. At first, spreading rumors seemed like winning, but then shame hit me hard. I understood how lying twisted our friendships, shattering our loyalty and pulling us further apart. As our group fractured, I recognized forgiveness wasn't only about Sarah, it was about me too. I needed to start a path to forgive, but it was tough. Friends started to slip away, leaving me feeling lonely. I missed the days when we laughed together and shared everything, but the reality was hard to swallow. We were now like strangers, lost in the confusion of my alternatives. I wanted what we had back, but I knew healing wouldn't be simple. The holes in our friendship were deep, and I was left looking at the disaster I produced, wondering if it was too late for us to restore things. "Do you even care?" Sarah yelled at me one day, her eyes flaming with hurt. "I thought I was protecting us," I shouted back, my heart pumping. "By tearing us apart," she shot out, her voice breaking. I felt the weight of her words. We stood there, two buddies become foes, feeling the keen sting of betrayal in the air. Revenge felt strong at first, but it rapidly turned ugly. I thought revealing Sarah would bring me justice, but it simply generated confusion. Our friendship flipped upside down. We were once best friends, now we were foes, full with questions and hurt. I felt a bizarre mix of happiness and remorse. Did I really want to harm her this much? As everything went apart, I noticed the damage wasn't only to Sarah. Our buddies started selecting sides. I felt alone. What I believed would make me stronger only made me weaker. Every laugh I heard reminded me of what I'd lost. Healing was hard. I missed the days when our friendship was easy and cheerful. The price of my revenge was great, and I suffered for it every day. The joy I imagined I'd experience faded, leaving me with a heavy heart. I became someone I didn't know, full with rage and regret. I realized that retribution may feel proper, but its ramifications stretch far and broad. Sometimes, it's easier to hang on to pain than to confront the truth. My actions flipped everything upside down, and now I had to cope with the disaster I'd produced. "Why did you do it?" Sarah questioned, tears in her eyes. "I thought it would make things better," I said, my voice weak. "But it only made things worse," she shot back. I nodded, recognizing she was right. I had to face the reality of what I'd done. Betrayal hit me like a slap in the face. I believed I knew my buddies, but I was incorrect. It felt like a sharp knife piercing into my heart. I trusted them without thinking, dismissing the tiny whispers in my head that whispered, "Watch out." Why did I let this happen? I asked myself, walking back and forth. Why didn't I see the signs? I could feel the wrath growing inside me, but I also knew I had to confront the truth. My world was based on fragile links, and it shattered rapidly. Trust isn't just about them, I realized. It's about me too. I had to dig deep. What was I thinking? The questions pained me, but they also opened my eyes. I realized that being strong doesn't equal being tough. Sometimes it involves being vulnerable, stating I've been harmed. Betrayal isn't just a painful sting, it can spark change. I took a serious look at my life and who I let in. I needed to toss away the poisonous ones and create place for individuals who actually cared about me. I deserve better, I told myself, and I meant it. As I moved on, I set definite limits. No more letting people walk all over me, I said angrily. I started allocating my time to those who made me feel protected, who didn't play games or influence me for their personal advantage. Betrayal might hurt, I discovered, but it can also be a wake-up call. It drove me to grow bigger and smarter. Each lesson changed me, letting me grasp what true friendship actually meant. In the end, I got my footing again, ready to confront the world with a new outlook and a fiery heart. Betrayal hurt me hard. I felt like I was in a dark pit, and I knew I had to crawl out. It was time to heal. I took a large breath and faced my feelings head on. I can't keep feeling this way, I told myself. So, I grabbed my book and started writing. Each phrase felt like a weight rising off my chest. I called my best friend, Mia, and poured out my heart. How could she do this to me? I cried. Mia listened, her voice steady. You need to find a way to let it go, she stated. I nodded, knowing she was right. I also elected to see a therapist. You have to forgive Sarah, the therapist remarked one day. Not for her, but for you. That hit me hard. Forgiveness felt unattainable, but I wanted my tranquility back. It was a slow process. Some days I felt like I was going forward, and other days I just slid back. But I went on. I worked on restoring my friendships with those who actually cared. You mean so much to me, I told Mia during one of our coffee sessions. I'm so glad you're here. She smiled, and I felt hope flashing back to life. I also learned to set limitations. No more drama. I pledged to myself. I'd protect my heart from any more treachery or greed. I refused to let poisonous love control me. Each day was an opportunity to accept new opportunities. Heartache became my instructor. It drove me to grow stronger. I'm ready for something better, I told Mia one afternoon. I could feel a spark of drive inside me. Moving forward wasn't just a notion, it was my new path. With every step I made, I felt lighter and more like myself again. I was determined to construct a life filled with meaningful connections. No more treachery, no more anguish. Just a bright future waiting for me. As I went down the road to recovery, I understood it was more than just moving on. It was about waking up again. I had to face the grief and betrayal head on. It wasn't easy. I felt confused and resentful. But I knew I couldn't stay there in that dark place forever. I can't believe she did this to me. I shouted, my fists clenched. I had to forgive Sarah, but more importantly, I had to forgive myself. I'd allowed her deception cut too deep, and that had to change. I realized that being strong inside was crucial. Even when I felt like I was falling apart, I had to stand up. Why did I let this happen? I asked myself during my solitary hours. I needed to figure out what I wanted from my relationships. I couldn't trust Sarah anymore, but I could start trusting myself again. I set up limitations, telling myself, I am worth more than this. Every single day, I took modest steps. Healing was a crazy ride, with ups and downs. It seemed like a ride, but I accepted it. I found delight in tiny things, like the sun shining on my face or a friend's grin. Slowly, the weight of betrayal started to lift off my shoulders. Get up, you're larger than this. I told myself, and I meant it. I was building a new foundation, stronger and smarter. No more poisoned love, no more manipulation. Just myself, pushing on, ready to accept whatever came next. Trust was broken, and I knew it wouldn't be easy to fix. After everything that went on, I had a great want to save our friendship. I dug into strategies to regain trust, searching for answers on how to manage this tough position. I knew that communicating honestly after a large argument was crucial. So, I reached out to Sarah, believing we might build a safe environment to figure things out. At first, it was rough. Betrayal stung like a bee, but I was ready to face it head on. We need to talk about what happened, I murmured, my voice calm but my heart pounding. I wanted us to share our feelings, even if it hurt like mad. I needed to hear her side, and I had my own suffering to give. This was vital for healing our friendship. As we chatted, I found fresh strategies to repair our trust. How can we move past this? I asked, attempting to keep the discourse rolling. We spoke up about our regrets and faults. I'm sorry for how I acted, I admitted. She nodded. I messed up too. This back and forth felt like a weight lifted off our shoulders. Slowly, the walls erected by sorrow and betrayal began to break. Rebuilding wasn't quick, but we were making gains. Each honest communication was like a brick removed from a wall. Trust wouldn't come gushing back, but I started to glimpse a flicker of hope. We have to work at this, Sarah remarked, her eyes determined. I want to try. That motivated me more than anything. I knew repairing trust wouldn't happen immediately, but I could feel a difference inside me. The storm in my heart was starting to calm down. I had to acknowledge the hurt I created, and that was part of my rehabilitation. I injured Sarah, and I felt the weight of my remorse. I never wanted to be the one who spread lies and hurt people. I realized that repairing relationships requires time and hard work. My actions had generated a wide divide, and I needed to learn from this. I'm sorry, Sarah, I muttered, thinking back to the mayhem I released. I had to put things right, not just for her, but for me. I needed to let go of my anger and the urge to lash revenge at people who hurt me. It was time to close this messy chapter of my life. I started reaching out to everyone I wounded. I botched up. Can we talk? I said, feeling afraid but determined. With each exchange, I felt lighter. Healing was a tough path, but I was ready to take it. Trust is fragile, I told myself, thinking of how easily I'd destroyed it. I was tired of the theatrics and deception. This was my chance to change, to repair my ties and find myself again. I took a big breath, ready to face a new beginning.